all week. There we go.
Week been having trouble with this mic. Citizens of the internet, if you're still awake, thank you. I apologize to any of my friends and family who I juked earlier. I was going to do it at 10, then I was going to do it at 10:30. I don't want to go into too much detail, but let's just say life happens and some shit got in the way. And usually what I'm trying to do on a Wednesday night is put some topics together and come on around 10 o'clock. And this week I just got sidetracked and I was totally preoccupied. I had to go do some other bullshit. And the whole time I was just like, man, I'm totally late for my stream. So I'm gonna do better in the future. Let's just start by saying that. Working with, I don't know if you happen to see, I was on Willie Bragg's show last week, and that was a cool conversation. I'm gonna try to have him on. I think we're gonna try to do a Saturday stream, maybe like a Saturday afternoon coffee type thing or something. But there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I even put together some shit for tonight to show y'all some original content a little bit. It is what it is. I'm probably hyping it up way more than I should be, but let's get right into it. I think one of the first things I wanted to talk about this week is the RFK Jr. thing, because there's a lot of people calling him a clown now, and and listen, it's still very early in this process, right? It's still very early, and I think to write anyone off or to call anyone anything at this point is not wise. But I will say this, and I've made it very clear: my candidate is Cornel West, and the reason for that is the Democrats. I'm a Bernie guy, and if you think that I'm voting for a Democrat after the last two election cycles, you're crazy. So Cornel West to me is the absolute best option, and he's already got the Democrats tripping balls. If you haven't seen, well, we already talked about it last week. So he's already over the target, so to speak. And so that's my guy right now, is Cornel West. But I like RFK, and I like a lot of what he's doing. I like the fact that he is out there saying the things he's saying and ruffling the tail feathers, making people have like this whole thing that just happened with him talking about the development of bioweapons and COVID being targeted to Ashkenazi, targeted so that it doesn't affect Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people, supposedly. This is the study that he cited, whatever. I'm not citing this as gospel, but just him saying that, and then the media kind of trying to make that a thing, has people talking about bioweapons now. And the reality is there's plenty of proof that the government is developing bioweapons. So the fact that that this man is bringing these kind of subjects into the lexicon or the conversation, the mainstream conversation, it to me is great on its own. I don't think that he's going to, I was going to say I don't think he's going to be president, but I don't think he's going to go anywhere in a Democratic primary, period. They're going to find a way to get rid of him. So I wanted to kind of just jump through a couple little things today. And the first clip I wanted to show was basically this piece where the Democrats, they did this. Hold on a second. Let me set this up. So the Democrats had this hearing, and I want to start by showing this clip of Rising, Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie before the hearing. So let's go all the way back to, I think this was like, what day is, let me look at the date on this real quick. 8 days ago. So today is the 26th, almost the 27th. It will be the 27th in less than an hour. So this was basically like the 18th. This was, or the 19th. This was 8 days ago. So let me set this up real quick. And I just want you to watch this, because this is basically Robbie and Brianna Joy Gray kind of setting up what the Democrats tried to do to your boy RFK Jr. last week. So just listen to a little bit of this. I won't make you watch the whole thing.
Democrats have sent a letter to House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government Chairman Jim Jordan requesting that he disinvite Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from a Thursday hearing on social media censorship. Kennedy, who's an already scheduled witness, has faced fierce criticism over his comments on bioweapons research and COVID-19.
In case somehow you missed the controversy during a Q&A that was off the record, according to Kennedy, here's what the 2024 hopeful said in his own words.
And we need to talk about bioweapons. I know a lot now about bioweapons because
So I played this last week
for the past
just for this clip.
2.5 years, and you know the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID.
So what he said right there is the point that everyone's kind of missing. They tried to make it a racism thing, but what he's saying is the U.S. and China both put money into ethnically targeted microbes.
19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Now, Democrats led by Representatives Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Dan Goldman, and Judy Chu argue that Kennedy has, quote, repeatedly and recently spread vile and dangerous anti-Semitic and anti-Asian conspiracy theories that tarnish his credibility as a witness and must not be legitimized with his appearance before the U.S. Congress, nor given the platform of an official committee hearing to spread his baseless and discriminatory views.
Okay, so they did the pearl clutch thing. They did the whole like, oh, he's a racist. They did the pearl clutch thing, and they tried to get him basically eliminated altogether from this hearing. So let's watch a little bit of this hearing. I just want you to see. So I watched about half of it. Let's see, this is now it started over. But okay, so. This is just the raw footage too, so forgive me. We'll kind of skip around a little bit. Again, I don't think we need to watch the whole thing, but I want you to just see some of this, because the argument I made, and I said this on Willie's show too. The argument I made here is it looks like there's two different hearings going on. There's RFK and the guys running the hearings, the Republican guys, the House Republicans, and then there's this whole like sideshow with the Democrats like clutching their pearls over racism. So just watch this just a little bit. And it honestly, I saw Matt Taibbi on I think he was on Rising actually, and he said it was a bad look for the Democrats, and he's right. It really is. Watch this.
Of work this committee has done to uncover what happened, and because of our third witness, Mr. Sauer, the lawsuit that he argued on behalf of.
Let's get to
when that question.
The opening. Okay, so
they would be misrepresenting.
This is the same chick who attacked.
Your willingness to come forward. We appreciate your willingness to fight for the First Amendment. With that, I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. Just have some administrative matters first. I wanted to introduce into the record page 55 from the committee's interview with FBI employee Roya Demlow, who you just spoke about, which took place on July 17, 2023. In that line, she says, the question was asked, okay, if someone were to leave here today, were to leave this interview and were to suggest or imply that when you said the laptop was real, that it meant that the FBI had affirmatively determined in October 2020 that the laptop belonged to Hunter Biden, that the contents belonged to Hunter Biden, and that the contents had not been manipulated in some way, would they be representing what you said, correct? Answer by Ms. Demlow. They would be representing what I said because I don't have much knowledge of that. They would be misrepresenting what I said because I don't have much knowledge of that. Because this committee likes to misrepresent or leave off complete sentences of what individuals said, I'd like to introduce this into the record at this time. Thank you. And as to no comment by an FBI, that's usually what they say when there's an ongoing investigation, particularly when it's a couple of days before an election.
So she's trying to counter the
Why are we here? Why?
the one witness.
No,
some
that's been the question that quite a number of people have been asking me. Why are you having this hearing? What does this have to do with inflation? What does this have to do with the cost of living? What does this have to do with the everyday lives of Americans, the thing that the Republican Party said that they would focus on if they had control of the House? Why would the Republican leadership and the committee majority give a hearing and a platform to the witnesses today, specifically to Mr. Kennedy, a man who has recently claimed that COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and Black people? The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Okay, right there she says it was targeted to Caucasians and Black people. Well, watch this up here. Let me find the spot where they try to make it as if Mr. RFK is basically attacking or making a racist trope about Black people by saying that they're targeted with the virus.
Let's not even think about what happens in 2024 with Russian trolls, Iran, China.
They're still using the
Self-spread.
Russian shit.
Brought up, I think, an important point by the ranking member that this body ought to be concerning itself with with issues that impact directly the American people. The rising price of groceries, 76% over the past 2 years for
This is a good point he makes.
foodstuff, the war in Ukraine, the inflation issues, the border issues, many other issues that concern us all as a nation. We can't do that without the First Amendment, without debate. When I gave my speech, my announcement speech in Boston 2 months ago, YouTube, I talked about all those issues. I focused on grocery. I focused on the fact that working class people can no longer afford to live in this country. I talked about inflation, all the issues that deeply concern you, and that you've devoted your career to alleviating those issues. 5 minutes into my speech, when I was talking about Paul Revere, YouTube deplatformed me. I didn't talk about vaccines in that speech. I didn't talk about anything that was a verboten subject. I just was talking about my campaign and things, the conversation that we ought to be having with each other as Americans. But I was shut down, and that is why the First Amendment's important. Debate, congenial, respectful debate is the fertilizer, it's the water, it's the sunlight for our democracy. We need to be talking to each other. Now, this is I just wanted to set this part up by showing you what they try to do. They try to censor him. The irony of them trying to censor him at a censorship hearing is hilarious. And I think Taibbi again talked about this on Rising today, but it's like, I don't know if they see that or not. I don't know if I think they're so wound up in this identity politics thing that they really don't see how ridiculous they look. This is a letter that many of you signed, many of my fellow Democrats. I've spent my life in this party. I've devoted my life to the values of this party. There's 102 people signed this. This itself is evidence of the problem that this hearing was convened to address. This is an attempt to censor a censorship hearing. the charges in this. And by the way, censorship is antithetical to our party. It was.
Well, it's on YouTube. The hearing's on YouTube, so that's good. Let's jump up a little bit. So I wanted to show you this. There's this part where Plaskett basically tries to do this racism thing. And she totally forgets the fact that he said it was also targeted to Caucasians. Where is this? I know it's up here. I think this is it.
Prevent them from seeking life-saving vaccines in the present. And knowing
what we have always understood in all likelihood was true, yet we now have yet one more piece of evidence from the folks at the FBI that they interfered. Comey interfered in 2016. Was it Director Wray himself who interfered in 2020? We still need to know.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes. And I think we'll do ranking member and one more.
It's funny because the Democrats in their defense of the FBI, I think that's going to come back to haunt them in the long term. But hey, what do I know?
And we'll have to take a break.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that we talked earlier about a post that Mr. Kennedy had at the beginning of the Biden administration. I just want the record to reflect that that post has not been taken down. So I'm wondering about the extent of...
It was put back up, actually. Elon Musk bought Twitter and put it back up. That's why it's still up. It's funny that her staff didn't realize that.
Censorship when the post is still there. But more importantly, again, I go back to just the fact that we are creating a platform.
That's their excuse to what kind of garbage is that? Like, oh, the post's still there, so it's fine. We don't have to worry about this.
For this kind of discussion, not about the censorship, not about free speech, but the content of some of that speech that we are amplifying. We're a very difficult time in Black America where individuals who were already sick with a disease were then reviewed, experimented on who already had a disease to see how far that disease went. And making the comparison that manipulates and preys on Black people's feelings about the atrocities of the past in order to prevent them from seeking life-saving vaccines in the present.
So she's saying that what RFK said, the footage we just watched, is to scare Black people away from getting vaccines and that it's like a dangerous thing because of that.
And
it's such a reach.
Knowing that this is dangerous, I cannot also be unaware that this comes from an individual who, by Mr. Roy's introduction, is very smart and understands the implications of this. You know, Mr. Kennedy's own family decries his stance on vaccines, and families disagree on a lot of things. I got family members that, you know, we all disagree, so that doesn't mean anything. But the fact that he has famously sent a request to a party guest that they had to be vaccinated to come to his party. And I'd like to introduce into the record.
He's anti-vax, but he made people get vaccinated to come to his party. Okay.
A letter from Louis Silkin, a law firm representing Mr. Kennedy, which states, as he has stated repeatedly, he vaccinated all his children.
He's an anti-vaxxer who vaccinated all his children. See, these people do not, they're literally making an argument that Robert F. Kennedy is an anti-vaxxer who required people who came to his party to get vaccinated and got his kids vaccinated. He's an anti-vaxxer who did all that stuff. That's their actual argument here. That's the argument that this lady is trying to make. That's how ridiculous this whole thing is. Let's keep going just for a minute before we switch gears.
And I'd like that to be introduced into the record.
Yeah, have that introduced into the record.
The Black community and myself, a mother of 5 Black children, that I should really be careful and not necessarily have the same safeguards to protect my family, my children, from a virus that has killed millions of people.
Yeah. Can you believe it's ridiculous to me that they don't see how stupid this looks. She's decrying, she's mad at him for telling people to be smart about these types of choices, to basically think twice before she gets her kids these shots, because people react differently to them. That's what she's mad about. It's so backwards because the virus is so scary.
Because I'm Black. There's no secret that this is an amplification of his own platform. You know, I'm not going to talk about the money that's received from the Children's Health Defense, from his anti-vaccine organization that's responsible for a majority of the false information out there about COVID, and the notoriety that's gained from it by manipulating Black and other vulnerable communities to propagate these pseudosciences. Ms. Wiley, are you aware of the phrase superhuman yet subhumanization?
I can't say I'm aware of the phrase. I am aware of the viewpoint.
And can you share what you believe that to mean when it comes to Black people?
Well, sadly and unfortunately, we have a history in this country where Black people were both by law and by social view viewed as inferior and subhuman, and that there were stereotypes attached to that that includes all kinds of myth about the ability to disregard both the health needs, health conditions, and disparities that exist for Black people and in Black communities, to the detriment not only of the health of people who are Black, but also to public health by not taking good, sound decisions.
In chattel slavery, you don't have to feed them the same way because they can take it. They can handle that. They don't need as much. Or now with COVID, they've got superhuman genes that.
Okay, stop right there. So she's trying to thread this needle of racism. Did you hear what she just said? Black, like RFK Jr. is saying that Black people have superhuman genes because he said that they should be skeptical of the vaccine. What about Caucasians? In the statement that she's referencing, he said that the Caucasians and Black people are more susceptible to the virus, and that Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people were less likely. And the study that he was referencing, I'm not saying this is real or not, vaccine safe and effective, all that good stuff. I'm just saying in the stuff that these people are outraged about, that they're clutching their pearls so hard about. The statement that they got him, the gotcha statement that they secretly filmed him on. And it's funny, I probably said this last time, but if you watch that video, the guy behind him, it's like, who is that guy? That guy's like, okay, he's looking at the camera like, yeah, we got him. This is not a good look, RFK. But back to this whole hearing thing, it's like this Plaskett lady is trying to thread this needle of racism, and it's just, I thought it looked completely ridiculous. I mean, I think most Black people can see through it. I think pretty much all Black people can see through it, except for this professor that they brought to like try and give this bullshit credibility. Even she's like, well, the chattel slavery. Yo, you're forgetting that he said the same thing about Caucasians. So is that racist? How does this add up in your brains? It just doesn't make any sense. It's the racism claims have zero merit because he said the same thing about Caucasians. Let's listen a little more.
They don't need to get the same vaccines in, and they may be more susceptible if you get vaccines. Ms. Wiley, why do you think someone might choose to target the Black community for false health information about vaccines?
Well, I can't say that I can sit in a position to explain why anyone would do that. I can only say that for those who wished to prevent people from getting a vaccine, it was very clear that one of the ways in which you could convince people not to is to play on fears that have basis in historic experience, sadly. And
Play on fears that have basis. Do these people listen to themselves? Yeah, of course. That's a good reason to be skeptical. Your fear has a basis. You just said it. There's a historical precedent here. Yeah, people have been fucked over by these forced medical procedures in the past. So you just said yourself, there's a historical basis. Oh my God.
And frankly, and I can say this personally, speaking from having conversations with friends, with people I worked with
family members,
who were terrified of whether or not
as they should
there might be some adverse consequences for them because of the Tuskegee experiments, explicitly referring to times in which Black people had been tested on without their permission.
Do these people not have any eyeballs? It's called informed consent. Oh my God, this drives me insane. It's just, I'm sorry, it just drives me insane that these people can do this and not see what they're doing. I mean, they have to know how stupid they look, don't they?
Or denied access to medical intervention despite awareness that it would be detrimental to their health. That distrust has historical fact.
Right. She's saying herself this is warranted distrust. And that anyone who points that out, who points to this good, valid reason to be distrustful, is a bad person. What?
And we have come to a point where, in terms of the COVID vaccine and what we were being told by scientists, including the ways in which both the CDC, the World Health Organization, and others were examining, were actually putting out factual information, both about the degree to which testing and trials before approval had included people who were Black, people who were Asian, and therefore had more basis in fact to be able to state scientifically.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from North Dakota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to yield my time to Representative Massey.
I thank the gentleman from North Dakota. Wow, the irony and cognitive dissonance from the other side of the aisle.
I gotta say, I was so happy to hear Thomas Massey voice my inner dialogue, basically, because seriously, the cognitive dissonance, the level of the lack of any self-awareness that these people have is just insane. It's just insane. I don't understand how anyone can look at this and not go, holy shit, these people are fucking out of their minds.
It's deafening. You could cut it with a knife. They are at the same time denying that censorship is occurring, but suggesting that there's more material that needs to be censored. This is a hearing on censorship that began with an effort, with a formal motion from the other side of the aisle to censor Mr. Kennedy. They do not want him to speak, yet that is the topic of this hearing. They have kept him from speaking.
What I think is great is as they go through this hearing, every time, like, Debbie Wasserman and Plaskett will try to talk over Kennedy or like some of the witnesses. And every time they do that, Massey or Jordan will go, please stop trying to censor the, stop trying to censor the witness. Stop trying to censor the witness, whenever they're trying to talk over him. It's pretty funny. I got to give him credit for that.
A collusion between the government and private organizations. Mr. Kennedy, in your opening statement, you introduced us to this word malinformation. Can you tell us more about this made-up word, what it means, and some of the things that you've said or tried to say that you've been censored for that's been characterized as malinformation?
Yes, Congressman Massey, and if by your leave, I'd like to just respond very briefly to some of the, what I would call defamations that have been just applied to me by the ranking member
we'll get into after this. I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a longer piece, but we'll get into RFK's overcompensation for the anti-Semitism claims later, and it'll be a very multiple angled discussion. It'll be a very nuanced debate or nuanced conversation. Let's put it that way, because it's not going to be a debate because it's going to be me. But listen,
I'm happy to talk to you about my opinions on these issues, what you have stated and tried to associate me with through guilt by association is simply inaccurate. Virtually everything, every statement that you just made about me is inaccurate. I have never advised Black Americans not to receive vaccines. At one point you say I'm anti-vax, and that's a bad thing. The other moment you point out that all my children are vaxxed. I'm fully compliant with the vaccine schedule myself, except for COVID. I took flu vaccines for 20 years straight. I have never been anti-vax. I have never told the public avoid vaccination. The only thing I've asked for, and my views are constantly misrepresented, so that the truth of what I believe is not, we're not allowed to have a conversation about that with the American people, which I believe vaccines should be tested with the same rigor as other medicines and medications. You tried to associate me a moment ago with the replacement theory, which is racist.
No, I did not say you
Time
had the
belongs to the
replacement
gentleman
theory.
from-
I
I
said
did
my
not-
colleagues
Time
did.
belongs to the gentleman from
I denounce that theory. It is racist, and I have never endorsed it or had any association with it. Our film on a medical, by the way,
Medical apartheid?
Bill Buxton, who is the Black CDC official who ultimately exposed the Tuskegee experiment, tried for years and years to appeal to CDC to stop it for 40 years. Finally, he got relief by walking into my uncle's office in the building next door. He held hearings and ended the experiment. I remember that very well. And to say that I created a film that encourages blacks not to get adequate medical care is just completely abhorrent.
Don't misuse my words.
It's the
sir.
witness's time. Do not censor the witness.
I'm not censoring the witness. I'm not censoring the witness. He's still talking.
It's
I don't
my
have the
time, and I've
ability to
given it to
censor.
the witness. Do not censor him.
I'm not censoring him.
If the views that you and others
so we don't need to watch we don't need to see all this drama. The point I wanted of me showing you all that was just to show you the cognitive dissonance, like the level of stupidity of the Democrats here, and how urgently and they need to censor him. So one of the big issues that people have with RFK is Israel. Okay. And let's revisit that, shall we? So I said on Willie's show, and I've said this before, I'm not an enemy of Israel. I'm pro-Israel, whatever you want to call it. But I will say this. It's very clear what's going on in Israel right now is not good. It is an apartheid state, right? And so I think what I'd like to do is remind people of a person who I think has the right take when it comes to Israel. And let me just remind y'all the wise words of your boy Gene Simmons. Listen to Gene Simmons right here. Here we go.
I want to talk about someone else who's in town, Roger Waters,
Yeah.
Pink Floyd. You're obviously Jewish. He's been coming out with all
Israeli.
and
Israeli,
He's been coming with a very
Jewish and
anti-Israel,
Israeli is Gene Simmons.
and what people perceive to be anti-Semitic comments.
I'm not sure that's the same thing.
Right. So what's your position about Roger Waters?
Well, first of all, he's a very talented guy. He's written some of the most wonderful music along with Floyd, many, many decades. And it's obviously held up, and he's got lots of fans. There is something to be said for keeping your political and other beliefs off the stage. His choice is to use the stage as a platform to further his point of view. There is a difference between a political statement about Israel and about anti-Semitism. By the way, anti-Semitism
Also involves Arabs.
There is a difference between a political statement about Israel and anti-Semitism. That is literally, let me just repeat that. There is a difference between a political statement about Israel and anti-Semitism. That is literally all RFK Jr. would have to say. Let's listen to the rest of the mighty Gene Simmons here.
The definition of a Semite includes the Arab world. So I think he's a well-meaning guy. I don't agree with his point of views, of course.
So do you think he's anti-Semitic, or do you think he's anti-Israel
I
as a state?
I think he is, from my point of view, inflamed, angry about the political situation, as we all are. You want there to be peace someplace. And look, I turn our attention to this wonderful fairy tale of a country, or their leopard.
So I just wanted to show you Gene Simmons there, because so you could understand that. I just want to show you Gene Simmons there talking sense about Israel, an Israeli Jewish man talking sense about Israel, because that's all RFK really needs to say is what Gene Simmons said, who is not out of the mainstream at all. Also, that Palestinians, deserve human rights. They're people, you should stand on the side of the oppressed. That's my position personally in any case. I got into it when that Jack Teixeira kid was arrested, and they tried to frame him as a white supremacist in the media. And this guy had leaked stuff that the press was using to report on about the Ukraine war. I'm like, he's obviously providing a valuable service. And people, some of my more conservative, older family members are like, no, he ran with some white supremacists and whatever. I'm like, yeah, of course he did, because he exposed some secrets. So how do we make this guy, a public enemy? We call him a white supremacist. It's like kind of what they're doing with Ice Cube for talking to Tucker Carlson. He's a white supremacist now. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much time going over all the RFK stuff. But I do want to address the Israel thing, because I think that I watched Convo Couch earlier, and I think that Craig and Fiorella kind of like really nailed it on RFK, and just on every front, because they both have different views about the situation, and so they both kind of voice opinions about the situation that I think are valid, but they're on different sides of the equation. So let's watch just a little bit of that and just listen to Fiorella and Pasta real quick talk about RFK.
Right up there. That will help us if you go over and subscribe over there. We do
to
that on a premium basis. I think his take sucks. It's awful.
Okay, so let's go back just a little bit.
Yes, I am happy for Cornel West's campaign. Yes. I'm not really happy for Marianne Williamson's campaign, fam. I don't know. She, whatever. But I am happy for these campaigns, and that is our job. That is what we will do. That's what we will continue to do here at the Convo Couch. And you can count on me to ask the tough questions. So sorry for my little soliloquy, fam, but if you got anything to say.
Yeah, Craig was the one who initially asked RFK, I think, about the Roger Waters thing, and tried to get him to clarify, and he looked kind of silly. But Glenn Greenwald too. Glenn Greenwald is where I originally saw RFK kind of waffling on the Roger Waters Israel thing.
Hey, please go ahead.
Really? You don't support RFK? I feel like you do. I feel like you defend him at every chance you get.
I appreciate the issues. I will always bring the issues. I support his stance on COVID. I think he is by far the only one out there that is really taking it serious. You know how strongly I feel about it. Mm-hmm. So I am happy for that. But
and I think these guys get into it a little bit, and I actually want to show this clip from Max and Aaron at the Gray Zone too. God, I hope I saved that clip. But the point here that they kind of get into, they get into the weeds a little bit, where it's like, I thought this as well. RFK is kind of playing a little bit to the Israel lobby and to that realm, I think, because of his COVID takes, and I think that's a valid take to a valid thing to think, because when you think about it, and I said this before, you got to pick your battles. So I don't think that he wants to be on the wrong side of the Israel lobby right now. Like that's an ally he probably wants because he's dealing with a lot bigger fish than that. And but that was my thought. But then Fiorella here, really, I think she made me realize that I'm wrong. And this is again why another reason I support Cornel West over RFK. I mean, at the end of the day, if RFK makes it through a Dem primary, you know, would I hold my nose and vote for him, even though I don't love his Israel take? Of course. But I don't think the chances of that happening are slim to none. That's not going to happen. I mean, look at how hard they're going at him already. But I like that though. I like that he's out there doing this because as you just saw, he's exposing how terrible these people are. So anyway, let's keep listening to Craig and Fiorella because I think Fiorella really made some great points here and didn't change my mind, but like made me really think more intensely about this issue and why I might be a little bit just more relaxed than some people are on it. And I'm biased. I have Israeli friends. I worked for Israelis. I love Israeli people. So I guess to some degree, I understand their plight. Have you ever lived in an area that was being shelled constantly? Me either. So I don't want to speak on Israel like I have the answers because I don't live there. I don't know the history as well as some people know it. But I think Fiorella, I'll shut up and let her talk.
But I don't agree with him on Israel. I think
Craig as well.
His take sucks. It's awful.
And so I'm where Craig is at. I like RFK a lot, but I do agree. I don't think his take on Israel is right. I don't think it's good.
I think it's more of a I think it's just a fundamental character flaw when it comes to the Palestinian Israel issue. I wouldn't even just say Palestine, it's Syria, Lebanon, Iran. I mean the entire Middle East. And for me it's a character flaw because somebody was really rude at the comments yesterday because I'm not on the RFK train and was saying that.
And again, think about it, guys. How could you be fully on the RFK train after what happened to Bernie Sanders in the last 2 election cycles? The Democrats have a sitting president. They're not going to let RFK run a primary against them or primary challenge. They're just not.
How can I say I'm not a one issue person? Because the issue about Israel encompasses a multitude of issues. It's not just one issue.
See, she's
so
right about
like
this.
When you say it's just one issue, I 100% disagree with that. It's not. It encompasses the issue of anti-imperialism. It encompasses the issue of expansion in the Middle East by Israel. It encompasses the issue of a U.S. Military faction that is Israel and the problems they can create. It also encompasses the issue of how quickly you'll be able to succumb to these powerful forces. So it's a plethora of
right there is a great point. How quickly you'll succumb to these powerful forces. Because if you remember, this all started when RFK erased his tweet supporting Roger Waters. And then he came out and started to say that Roger Waters is anti-Semitic. And even some of the stuff RFK said in that hearing I was just showing you, he's like talking about how he's to the right of Biden on, all this stuff related to Israel, which is like, yo, dude, no one's asking you to go that far, just be reasonable is all we want here, bro. So let's keep listening to Fiorella here, because I think her and Craig both make very good points.
Issues with RFK, and it's not just that issue. And I think it's a character flaw to justify apartheid, because that's what it is. So for me, it's not something you can just say, well, he sucks on this issue. You can say they suck on an issue. To me, like COVID, it required people to be extremely intelligent in a way that they haven't been before, because people have been subjected to trust the NIH. They've been completely programmed to.
She's right about that. You can't blame people for the COVID trickery. Like I bought it at first, most people still buy it. It's crazy.
To trust doctors, the World Health Organization, and all of that. So for me, people not seeing through COVID is more forgiving. People. The institutions, however, obviously to me, that's a whole other nefarious issue. So, and I also think he is sort of not looking at all the people that brought him there when it comes to COVID. He seems to be not fully going with that. And that says to me that he's willing to compromise too much too soon and too early. So that's why I don't see
That's
it
a
as
valid
an
argument.
equal issue, because the way one encompasses so many issues is that, and that's just, I think that's not just my opinion, but it's the opinion of a lot of people. And I can't just be like, well, he's good on COVID and he's okay on Russia, Ukraine, but he's fine with apartheid, and so I'm going to go and support apartheid. I'm going to support imperialism. It's just a much bigger issue for me.
Yeah, I get that, and I don't I don't begrudge you for that. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, if you could just look brass tacks on how many people have really been affected financially, health wise, and whatnot, what goes on with the COVID situation is off the charts. And I
In
hate
the United
that
States,
that cost
especially.
benefit analysis of sorts. You know what I'm saying? When you look at those things,
Yeah, but
and here's the thing: I don't even know
politics here should be
why he has
about
this
the
feeling
United
towards
States.
Israel and what's going on. And I mean, Lavrov kind of feels the same way. I mean, I know that Russia, aren't they going to move an embassy into Jerusalem too as well? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it is a I don't want to say it's a third rail, because it's not.
I'd like to know more about that, what he said about Russia building an embassy in Israel, if that's true. Because here's the thing, and I said this before to someone online, and I don't listen. Again, I don't pretend to have the answers about Israel, but this is where my brain is coming from, right? I watched this documentary about the West, Kim Burns' The West, right? And they talk about how literally this is what happened in California. There were like these Mexican guys, these like kind of like, I don't know what you would call them, ranchers, I guess, just really nice dudes. And people started moving out here for the gold rush and just like setting up camps on their land, and they just let them do it. And eventually these people took over their land and kicked them out. You know what I mean? Like, that's how kind those people were. And so, but you don't see like people in Mexico like shooting missiles into California trying to fight the land, take the land back. Like, Mexicans assimilated largely into California or into the United States or whatever, wherever they were at. And I'm not saying that makes it okay either. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but it's what happened. We have to kind of keep moving forward. And so how do you keep moving forward when, if there's people, but also I see the stuff that Israel does, like they're literally moving into these people's land, just like I said, people here in California did. And so I don't know what the answers are. I don't know what the answers are. What does Palestine want? Like, give them a state, give them, if that's what they want, give it to them, give them a territory of their own, and Israel stay the fuck out of it. Let them have their own little city, like Koreatown or Little Armenia or whatever the hell we have here in LA. It's no one's bothering. You don't see like Little Koreatown bombing our Little Armenia or anything like that. Everyone lives in harmony. There's different sections. There's Chinatown, there's Koreatown, there's Little Armenia, there's all these different sections of town. Everyone knows that Glendale's where all the Armenian people are, and no one, I love Armenian people. There's just an Armenian person here a little while ago. So point I'm getting to here is just that I can understand why people will give RFK somewhat of a pass on Israel. But when it comes down to brass tacks, he needs to explain what his position is a little more clearly, rather than just, I'm super pro-Israel and like, okay, what's your position on the Palestinians? Like, should they stop settlements? Like, do they get their own state? Like, two-state solution? What do we need to do to stop the fighting? And I don't pretend, like I said, I can sit here and yap all night. I don't pretend to have the answers.
Because it should be equally important. But at the end of the day, like I said this, and right now, if I had to vote tomorrow, I still might go vote Cornel West. And he's terrible on the whole fucking COVID situation, but yet he's an independent party person that's running, because me, I'm going to vote. You're not going to vote. I'm going to vote. We have our differences when it comes.
She's also in Russia, but I haven't heard I honestly didn't even think about that with Cornell, the COVID thing. I mean, like Fiorella said, a lot of people were duped by that. Someone was screaming at me because Cornell West supported voting for Biden. I'm like, yo, if that's the worst thing he did, oh well. You know what I mean? I have a lot of people who were smarter than that voted for Biden because they were tricked by the media into thinking Trump was like the next, just some crazy Satan, which is, you know, like he's some exceptionally different politician or con man than Joe Biden or any of the other people we've had in office. You know, he's not. But it worked. And so you can't, so the idea that like, oh, Cornell West voted for Biden, so that's a non-starter. That's not, it doesn't make sense. Sorry. I'll listen to a little bit more of this.
Comes to that too as well. But, you know, when I start lining up the issues and just the whole brass tacks of having certain things talked about that won't be talked about, like right now today, I know we don't have it, but the Missouri versus Biden case is encompassed with the Kennedy versus Biden case when it comes to freedom of speech, when it comes to, is the government allowed to be talking to these big tech companies to censor people, right? And right now they are allowed to. The State Department, the White House. This is something that Dr. Shiva showed us. Right?
So I'll jump right there, but he makes a great point. And that to me is why I like the fact that Kennedy's out there, whether I think he's going to win the Democratic nomination or not. I like that he's out there, you know, talking about this stuff. And you guys, I wish I was more active in the chat. I will get better about that as time moves on. Right now I have kind of shitty computer setup and I'm running this show by myself. So it's hard for me to jump in the chat like during the show. Maybe I need to start doing super chats at some point or something. And maybe I will, but in the short term, forgive me for not jumping in the chat. Like I usually try to jump in before and after, but I'm usually just trying to plow through all this material I have before I pass out. I got off to a late start. So tonight, because someone came over that I wasn't expecting, and I was kind of like, hey, you know, I don't want to just be like, get out of here. You know, I couldn't be a bad host. So keep it on here. While we're talking about Cornell West, he was on my man Lee Camp's show, and I wanted to just show a little bit of that because Lee Camp is the man, and they had some interesting little kind of asides here, and I'm going to try to jump around because I don't want to again watch the whole thing, but let's just listen to a little bit of this, talk about it.
I assume if you were president, that's something you would jump in on.
Well, no, he'd be one of the first ones I would pardon, man. Mumia Abu-Jamal, Leonard Peltier, H.Rap Brown, who is now Iman Al-Hameen, and bring Brother Snowden back and Asada Shakur back because she wanted to come. It would just
So he's talking about if he got elected president, he would pardon Snowden and Assange and stuff.
be a matter of first trying to zero
I mean, right there, it's like, okay, who else is talking about that?
in on the political prisoners and those who tried to tell the truth about the American empire and its predatory capitalist processes and the various ways in which our legal system has been so bent against truth tellers. You know, there's a long history of that, but I would think that one of the roles of anybody in government is to try to bend it toward the truth tellers and the justice seekers.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to just get this out of the way early because you know, I'm sick of seeing it, and every Green Party or any third party really candidate who runs, they get it from day one.
I love one of the reasons I hold this video is because Lee Camp asks the best questions. He really does. This man has his shit together, unlike me, and actually asks really good questions and gets really good answers.
And you know, they already are calling you a spoiler. I posted I was going to be talking to you, and someone immediately said a vote for Cornel West is a vote for Trump. So let's just get out of the way early. Are you going to spoil the perfect, pristine, immaculate morally spotless, ethically unimpeachable 2024 recoronation of Joe Biden?
You know, it's just amazing to me that when you attempt to both tell the truth and pursue justice and try to do it in an organized way, the focus is primarily on you rather than those who supportedly and purportedly should be speaking to these issues, has had time to speak to these issues. The Democratic Party had candidates that was dealing with issues of poor and working people, dealing with militarism abroad, dealing with Wall Street greed, dealing seriously with white supremacist practices and so forth, dealing seriously with police who often are unaccountable. Then my candidacy would come along and be redundant. They would say, well, we already got these figures who are in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
No,
That's a good
Democratic
point.
Party is a party of war on Wall Street. It's a party of big business. It's a party of the wealthy. And lo and behold, as soon as somebody comes along or a group of people come along and raise their voices, they say, well, no, we look at this through the lens of the establishment. It's either these neo-fascists on the right or these neoliberals. That's the only choice we have. Why is that the only choice? Well, if you present another choice, you must be a spoiler. So I mean, the very notion of trying to downplay and minimize and trivialize, not just the voices, but most importantly, the suffering that we are talking about. That's what makes me deeply, deeply upset. And yet, you know, we see this every 4 years, though, brother. We've seen it every 4 years.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, just to throw in here also that something you said on CNN, which is many of the people that voted for Jill Stein or voted for Ralph Nader or might vote for you, we're not planning on taking part in the duopoly theatrical stunt that has become our elections. So the fact that they're voting for you does not mean they were going to vote for Joe Biden otherwise. But
that's
true.
Well said, Lee. Well said. Yeah. I mean, in the last election cycle, I kind of threw my vote away because I'm in California and I kind of knew that Joe Biden was going to take California. But had the Green Party put up a good candidate, they did not in Howie Hawkins, I would have voted for the Green Party. I will vote for Cornel West. Normally, I'm not voting for the Democrats. So if I pick up a ballot, you know, I might look at an independent candidate. I might, you know, I honestly, I have never voted for a Republican except one time, and it was in the primary, and it was Ron Paul. That's the only Republican I've ever voted for. And it's arguable whether or not he's actually a Republican. I mean, he was the one guy on the stage pre-Trump who had the balls to say the Iraq war was not a good idea, and he didn't vote for it. And I don't know if people remember this. I hammer on it a lot. I bring it up a lot. But Obama beat Hillary for the Democratic nomination in 2007 because he did not vote for the Iraq war. So I think what I would like to do for y'all right now, since we just talked about Cornel West, I would like to bring in a special guest for you to kind of give you his take on Cornel West's candidacy for president. So I hope you're ready for this. It's rare that we get to have a guest on this show, but ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring on James Carville right now. James Carville is going to give you his take on Cornel West. James, take it away.
He's obviously an accomplished scholar, academic. He seems to be a very charming man. And he's also a minister to the threat of the continued constitutional order in the United States. I say that because
he's a threat to the continued constitutional order in the United States. Really, James? Really, James? Really? Let's keep going, James. Please tell us more.
Look what Ralph Nader was directly responsible for the election of George W. Bush, which brought about this horrific Iraq war and this horrific economic downturn we had, among other things. Jill Stein, who's his campaign manager, is almost certainly an agent of the Russian government. If you don't believe me, somebody at home, Google photo, General Flynn, Vladimir Putin, Jill Stein. She was hosted by the Russians prior to her running in 2016.
Naughty, Jill. Naughty. Thank you, James. We appreciate your contribution tonight, Mr. Carville. I'm gonna start doing that more often, just having these guest speakers on. Let's thank you, James. Really appreciate that insight. But it just goes to show you that this whole line about third parties and spoilers, it never fails. They trot it out every year. Every freaking year. And so one of the things I would like to talk about right now is right now there is in Los Angeles, this is kind of local news. There's a strike going on. It's local, but it's national, it's international news because the strike is preventing Hollywood productions from happening. And I really wish I had pulled this clip of Russ. I forgot about it until tonight. I was very unprepared tonight. And, I'm going to keep beating myself up about it. But Russ Dobular from Due Dissidence had such a great take about, and I'm going to have to, maybe I'll cut it in post when I edit this to a video. Maybe I'll do that. But just to kind of summarize what Russ was talking about, he was talking about this strike and everything, and just how basically Hollywood is going to become a commodity and AI is going to take over, and it's like it's kind of, Hollywood is kind of like a dying relic. And the analogy he made was so good because he was comparing it to what happened to music when the iPod hit and people stopped buying records and listening to MP3s instead, and Napster and all that kind of stuff took over. It's like now the movie industry is kind of going through a similar thing, and it's like you are your own brand, and the ability to make a decent movie, it's already so cheap. There's already people making great movies out of their house. You have digital editing equipment, and whether or not actual big budget productions will ever end is debatable. I don't think it will. If you liken it to music, someone hit me with this the other day, and I'm kind of getting not off topic here, but off topic. But this happened with the music industry, and we were talking about classic records and how the means of production changed in the 2000s from analog tape recording largely to digital Pro Tools on the grid recordings. And we were talking about the difference in the quality of records from, the 1950s and 60s through the 90s. I mean, I have a 90s playlist that it's got every genre and every song on it's great. It's got R&B, there's so much great rap obviously in the 90s. But rock, grunge rock, alternative rock, even metal was great in the 90s. You had bands like Metallica and Megadeth and Anthrax putting out records. And, the 90s was just such it was kind of the peak of that. And it's like, I get to the 2000s and there's a lot of great records I like that have come out over the last 23 years, in the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s era even. But there's just a massive difference, and I think with film and TV, it's you see the similar trend. It's like, there's a lot of Netflix movies, but then there's like Tom Cruise, Top Gun, right? There's a difference. Or Oppenheimer that just came out, the new Nolan movie, Christopher Nolan. So anyway, there's a writer's strike. There's a Writers Guild strike, SAG after strike going on right now. And I wanted to start by showing you this tweet because it has a speech from one of the latest, greatest actors in the game, your boy, Bryan Cranston. But the content of kind of what I was trying to the point I was trying to make by showing this is more about the politics of strikes in general. So listen to this speech real quick and we'll talk about it.
Tiger. I know, sir, that you look through things through a different lens. We don't expect you to understand who we are, but we ask you to hear us, and beyond that, to listen to us. When we tell you we will not be having our jobs taken away and giving to robots. We will not have you take away our right to work and earn a decent living. And lastly, and most importantly, we will not allow you to take away our dignity.
But you can't take away my dignity. Okay, so this is the point I want to make here. You see that? That's a union. That's Bryan Cranston, famous Hollywood actor, far left, whatever the conservatives are saying about Hollywood these days. Like maybe he's the king of a pedophile ring, whatever. But the point I wanted to make is that's a fucking strike. That's a goddamn workers' strike. Yeah, actors make a lot more money than truck drivers, but I also want you to remember, or rail workers, but I also want you to remember what Biden and the fucking Democrats did. Remember this. This is from Politico. President Joe Biden on Friday signed legislation to bring to a close any threat of a rail strike by enshrining into statute a contract between labor unions and the freight rail industry. They crushed a rail strike with the help of the Republicans. The Democrats crushed a rail strike with the help of the Republicans. And people, we need to get together, okay? I feel like the rail strike people, the rail workers are probably a little bit more red state. They're probably a little more country than Bryan Cranston is, but they have the same interests. Did you hear what Bryan Cranston was doing? He was calling out Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, and telling him that, no, machines are not going to take our jobs. Truck drivers, train engineers, people that run, they have they're fighting the same battle. Y'all are fighting the same battle, but you're busy trying to dunk on each other with anti-vax or this or pro-life that, or, drag queen this and Bud Light that. And it's like, no, people, hey, do you not see this here? SAG, AFTRA, Directors Guild, whatever. It's not the Directors Guild, it's the Writers Guild. Directors Guild, you're next. Let's get you out here, motherfuckers. But what the hell? Rail workers, fuck Joe Biden's enshrining shit into law. Fuck them. Shut it down. Walk away. Get on board with the fucking actors and the SAG, AFTRA people and the Writers Guild. All you guys join forces. Shut shit down. That's what I'm saying. It's easy for me to say because I'm not an actor or a Hollywood writer or a rail worker, but I'll be out there with you if you guys do it. I'll support you any way I can, because that's the kind of action that we need right now. Voting ain't going to change jack shit. You think Cornel West or RFK Jr. is going to be president? No, it's going to be Trump or Biden, someone that the fucking assholes in power approve. And Whitney Webb is such a champion of this idea that, hey, fuck off. You really think a president is going to change anything? It's not. It doesn't matter who's do you think it mattered who was president? When the civil rights happened? No, people burning down buildings and fucking shutting down cities is what changed shit. The slaves didn't get freed because people were like, hey, don't do that. We're going to vote for someone that changes it. No, people had a fucking war over it. That's what changed it, and just throughout history, look at it. Like shit ain't going to change until working people unite and take action. And now it's very clear that the Hollywood people are feeling what middle America has been feeling for a long time. People, now Bryan Cranston is feeling what the fucking rail workers were feeling at the end of the last year. But Bryan Cranston will still run out and tell you to vote for Joe Biden. That's the difference, and these people need to get their heads out of their asses. I'm talking specifically about my ilk, the Hollywood crowd. And I only say my ilk because it's not like I'm famous or anything. I just live in LA. So I can lump myself in with these assholes because I'm on the outskirts of it, But I'm just saying, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I fucking love LA. I will die here, I'm sure. It's a great city. It's a beautiful city. I love everything about it. The weed, the women, the weather, and other things too. But back to my point. Bryan Cranston, rail workers. Come on, motherfuckers. Get your heads out of it. Quit trying to dunk on each other over stupid bullshit. And get together and figure out that there's power in numbers, and the division shit is very intentional. I think the next thing I want to talk about here, because this is fresh out the oven, and I watched the whole thing already because I am a mark. I'm a mark ass trick, as my pimp friends would say. But no. So Ice Cube, rap legend Ice Cube, was just on Tucker Carlson's new Twitter show. And I got to give Tucker Carlson credit. That is what I loved. He's challenging himself. Okay? He's challenging himself. And for Tucker Carlson is the most white bread dude, hunting rifle, I love my family, conservative dude, just right, but people forget he was a deadhead back in the day. But anyway, I want to give him credit for having a voice of someone like Ice Cube on his show, because Ice Cube, people, this is what I tweeted out. I'm not going to go read the tweet or anything, but I think this sentiment is what people need to get through their thick fucking skulls, because there were a lot of people in the hip hop world. They're like, oh, fucking Ice Cube, oh, Tucker Carlson, oh, white supremacy. Ice Cube is a white supremacist, dude. Yeah, you really think Ice Cube is a white supremacist? Are you fucking kidding me? Oh my God, these people are so stupid. It's so stupid at this point. Like, if you don't see how stupid you look, you just look stupid. So my point was, you should be happy that Ice Cube is on Tucker Carlson's show giving his fuck the police message to conservatives. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not even saying that myself. I'm just saying, so I want to show you a clip from this. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm not saying that myself. I'm saying blah, 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 blah. What the fuck am I saying? What the fuck are you saying, dude? How many times can I say fuck on a YouTube stream before they cite me for obscenity or whatever? Okay, I'm not going to say it anymore. So check this out. I want you to watch a little bit of this with me, because there's some good stuff happening here. Specifically, the one part I'm gonna dig for it. It's a pretty short interview. It's only like 20 minutes, so it's not gonna be too hard to find the clip I want to find. But he talks about, Tucker asks him, how do you feel about the police these days? And it's the interchange after that is beautiful. It's beautiful, like I said, that Tucker Carlson's audience is hearing Ice Cube talk about this stuff. So let me find it.
Of all interviews, you could do an interview with anyone. You're doing an interview with me. Obviously, you're going to take abuse for doing that. Like, why would you do that?
Because I think it's silly not to talk to people.
God damn it.
I think.
Yeah. So right out the gate, you got to love that. Tucker's like, you're going to get in trouble for this. People are going to call you a white supremacist. And they did. They already have. There's a picture of him with his face welded on Trump. It's like, but honestly, these days, it's like, that's just what you have to do. You have to piss off all these stupid simps and just be yourself and let the chips fall where they may. And, you can't worry about what all these assholes think, because everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's online doing a live stream and saying their opinion. Fuck these people.
Whether we agree or not,
right?
That has nothing to do with it. It's like, this is what it's all about. Let's talk about it. Let's debate. And I've been shut out.
Wait, that sounds like right-wing extremism and whataboutism.
But I've been shut out. Some platforms will not have me on.
Why?
They don't like that I'm, an independent thinker. I'm not part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So,
can I just say, I'm a white boy from suburbia. I ain't proud of that. No, it's what's, you're born where you're born. But I would not know This man educated suburban America on the plight of black people in the hood. Really, Cube was, looking for the product, thinking every brother's selling narcotics. I'm just saying, man, this guy educated me.
I'm an outsider.
And many white boys like me.
And so, I'm not part of the club. So I have to go places for one that I'm welcome, and where I can voice my opinion without somebody, saying I'm a bad person and that they never want to have me on their platform again.
What platforms have banned you?
I've been
listen to this.
I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So
they're like, oh, you didn't simp for the Democrats when we wanted you to, so you're a bad person. Whoopi Goldberg and Sonny Hostin probably.
Or a few of the hosts, I mean. So that's what I was told by the producers. I don't know if the producers was just copping out and using some of the hosts to not have me come on and explain.
Let's be honest. Is The View really Ice Cube's audience? Probably not.
Myself, but
you'd be a good booking for them.
I've been on there before.
Yeah.
It's just when I've became an independent thinker, when I've, I'm not, I don't follow their brand of politics, I guess.
But if you can't think for yourself, then you're not really free, are you?
No, you're not. You're not. But I've been excluded. I've been excluded on Oprah.
On Oprah?
On Oprah, yeah. I've been excluded.
Okay, so I want to find this part where he
I would
talks
think
about the police.
And everything else, people's rights, doing things the right way. Like, what's your view of the military? Like,
Okay, okay, hold on. Listen to this.
That is giving the people who put him in, they never got to it or never planned to. Matter of fact, the guy left the administration. So, after talking to him for a year or so, he was gone, and then
Sorry,
we were left really.
I clearly should have found the timestamp,
continue the
but I know it's coming up.
conversations.
What do you think of Biden?
Here it is.
I don't think he's giving the people who put him in exactly what they thought they were going to get from him.
But his most loyal voters, according to the polls anyway, are black voters, particularly black women.
Mm-hmm.
And those numbers don't seem
He did put a black woman on the Supreme Court. I'm pretty sure they're talking about Biden. So that's actually one of the things I gave Biden credit for.
to change. So no matter what happens or doesn't happen. So do you expect they ever will change?
Whether they become independents and not vote for anybody who's not bringing it. It's like people want your vote. They have to do something to earn it. If they don't earn it, why are you going down there and pulling that lever?
Because the other side hates you. That's the pitch they make. We may suck, but the other side hates you.
You're supposed to dance with the person you brought.
Yeah.
And the person that brought you to the dance, you guys are supposed to dance together. And if that doesn't happen, you got to go find another dancing partner before the night is up and the music stops.
What do you think of Kamala Harris?
I mean, obviously she's a great politician to be able to, and I think their philosophy sometimes is detrimental to the people.
Okay, see,
It's important.
I skipped it.
That brought you to the dance. You guys are supposed to dance together. And if that doesn't happen.
So forgive me because I just watched this and I really, like right before I went on stream, and I didn't really have time to find the exact timestamp, but it's coming. The point that I'm trying to get to is it's coming up.
You got to go find another dancing partner before the night is up and the music stops.
What do you think of Kamala Harris?
I mean, obviously she's a great politician to be able to become the vice president of the country. I don't know how effective she is at her job.
What's your view of the police at this point?
It's the same. You know, it really is, you know. It's like looking at, like, what's your view of the military? Like, they're the military. They're always gonna be the military. If I asked you this in 1946, you'd be like, they're the military.
Yeah.
So it's a fraternity, it's an organization that does things a certain way. And I think their philosophy sometimes is detrimental to the people they're serving, because I think cops have a win and make it home philosophy. Win whatever battles you have in the street, make it home at night. And that's actually the most important thing. And everything else, people's rights, doing things the right way, you know, being totally fair and square all the time and not, you know, being a little aggressive, you know, all that comes second to win the encounter, make it home at night. And you can't really fault somebody for thinking that way as a police officer, but that's the philosophy, so everything else comes second to that. So guy might not care if he violated your rights. He's gonna win this encounter, he's gonna make it home tonight. And that's all that matters. And sometimes I think that's what we see is an organization hell-bent on winning, and not a fraternity or organization hell-bent on upholding the law and doing everything right or by the book, so to speak.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's just the nature of that fraternity.
Maybe of organizations.
Yeah, you know, it's they come with a philosophy, and you know, you can try to buck it if you want to, but more than likely they're gonna get you out the way and stay in formation.
Do you think that it's harder?
So I think I wanted to show that specifically because how can you not be happy that Tucker Carlson's audience, which is mostly conservative, right-leaning people, you know, there's actually an argument to be made that it's not mostly conservative, right-leaning people. When he was on Fox, they said that, I mean, I don't know, I never looked at the actual numbers, but I heard murmurs that he got more Democrats during primetime viewing hour than Rachel Maddow and MSNBC did. So it clearly wasn't just right-wing conservatives watching Tucker, but there are a lot of right-wing conservatives watching Tucker, and they just heard Ice Cube say all that stuff about the police. Very sensible, very not sounding like an extremist or someone who is out of step with the mainstream. The guy wrote the song The Police. I mean, come on. So that's a great question that Tucker asked him, and I loved his answer. It was just very to the point and correct, and in no way does he harbor any, you can tell that he harbor any animosity towards cops. But he kind of laid out the problems, like the core problem. And I think, I'm pretty sure it was Jimmy Dore who I saw say this before. He said almost the same thing. And he was analyzing a video that Obama says, like, it's their job to help you. And it's like, he's like, no, that's not. A cop's job is to get home safe. They don't care about you. You know, their job is to get home safe. And, you know, so watch that whole interview if you're into Ice Cube at all. It's the whole thing is really interesting, and they did some other stuff prior to that, some little kind of like drives through town. That was kind of like the in studio interview. But so for this last little bit, well, maybe not the totally last one, but this is a 5-minute clip, and I didn't even get to watch all of this. I just saw like little bits of it, but this guy gets a lot of shit for being right wing or whatever, like pro Putin, but it's Jackson Hinkle, and he was just on Piers Morgan, and I thought I really wanted to see the full thing, but what I saw of it, I was congratulating him on, because I think the fact that he went on mainstream TV and did this, it's very Jimmy Dore-esque. And you know what? I just want to say before I move on any further, today I think I saw Misty tweet out that today is Jimmy Dore's birthday, and if it is, I just want to say, God bless Jimmy Dore. Peace to Jimmy Dore. That guy, he just does the best work, I think, and he has elevated a lot of people around him, and he doesn't ask for credit for it. But I watch, Max Blumenthal in the Gray Zone, and the guys from the Durant and RBN, Nick Cruz. I know of Nick Cruz from RBN, and like all the political shows, pretty much with the exception of a very small number, I watch because of Jimmy Dore, because Jimmy Dore had these people on his show. And I don't even remember how I got into Jimmy Dore. It's crazy, because I used to be a TYT guy. I used to watch TYT all the time when they first kind of started coming up after Rachel Maddow and Keith Olbermann went south. I used to watch Rachel Maddow. Jesus, I can't believe I'm admitting that. But so Jimmy Dore is amazing, and he's why I know about Jackson Hinkle. And I don't always agree with everything Jackson Hinkle says, but I think for the most part, he has his head on right. And for my money, the big thing in general is question authority, and always question popular narratives, and always question everything. Never take anything at face value. And I think anyone who lives by that modicum, I guess, to use a big word that I don't usually use, or by that mantra, whatever you want to call it, that philosophy, I respect. And I think Jackson is one of those guys. So listen to him talk to Piers Morgan here about the Russia-Ukraine thing, and we'll talk about it.
With 260,000 subscribers, is a prominent voice in this pro-Putin community. He recently tweeted, Putin has God on his side in his quest to defeat NATO Satanists. So why is he saying all this? Well, let's ask him. Joining me now is the Putin fan, YouTuber Jackson Hinkle, and the Russian-British host of the Trigonometry podcast, Konstantin Kisin. Okay, well, welcome to both of you. Jackson, I don't get it. Vladimir Putin invaded illegally a democratic sovereign country, has wreaked total mayhem. He's killed innocent women, children. He's bombed maternity hospitals. He's been on a barbaric rampage. Why would you choose this moment to revere him?
I would choose this moment because most of what is said about Vladimir Putin in the mainstream press by talking heads like yourself is just factually not true, just like everything that people like you said about COVID. The fact of the matter is, this war that everyone talks about that so-called started on February 24, 2022, actually began in 2014 after the U.S. led a violent coup on the Ukrainian government that was democratically elected. When people, specifically ethnic Russians in the Donbass, decided that they didn't want a U.S.-installed puppet government filled with Nazis, they vocalized their opinions. And for that, they were met with violence and aggression by the Ukrainian government, who slaughtered them for 8 years. 15,000 people died in this fighting while Putin tried to achieve peace through the Minsk Accords and the Minsk II Accords, all of which ended up being rejected by the Ukrainian government at the behest of Germany and the United States. The Ukrainian government continued to push forward despite the fact that Putin wanted peace, and they said that they wanted to join NATO. They said they wanted to have nukes right on Russia's border. And because of that, Putin stepped in and said, hey, look, we're going to stop the bloodshed. We're going to stop the NATO escalation. We're going to stop the risk of potentially this unfolding into a full-fledged nuclear war. And we're going to do what needs to be done. We're going to liberate the ethnic Russians in Ukraine. We're going to de-NATO-fy Ukraine, and we're going to de-Nazify Ukraine.
All right, I've given you a good chance to answer there. I've got to say, a lot of that I think was a crock of crap. Genuinely, the connection went down, so there's no conspiracy. We weren't trying to silence. No, I just find it odd. I mean, for argument's sake, when Saddam Hussein invaded
the connection went down,
did you feel that he was a peace-loving guy that we should be instinctively supporting, or did you agree with American conservatives then that what should actually happen is Desert Storm and General Schwarzkopf should be leading the American charge to repel him. And if you felt the latter, why would you feel differently about someone like Putin doing this in Ukraine?
Well, I don't know if you know, Pierce, I'm only 23 years old, so I didn't have fully fledged opinions on that at the time. But what I think is very interesting is for all the Western officials that are so outraged over what Putin is doing in Ukraine, why were they not outraged over what NATO did to Yugoslavia or what NATO did to Libya or what the United States did in Iraq and Afghanistan or Syria? The United States drone operation program in Africa had a 95% civilian death rate. For everyone to be so up in arms over Putin liberating these ethnic Russians in Ukraine from Nazis, it is just, I have no...
Listen, Jackson, the trouble is, some of the stuff you said in your initial response is historically defensible. You can argue from 2014, there's been this issue there. I get that. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. But when you say that Putin's only game here is to go and liberate the Ukrainians from Nazis, you just sound completely bonkers. Bonkers. Not to say there aren't some far-right people with Nazi tendencies in Ukraine. There are, as there are in many countries. But the idea this is a Nazi-run country when the president is Jewish, never mind anything else, is laughably ridiculous.
Well, just because he's Jewish doesn't mean he's not sicking his Azov Nazi thugs on ethnic Russians in the Donbass.
You think a Jewish president is going to be actively promoting Nazism? That's
correct.
Your position.
The ones with swastika tattoos and Hitler tattoos in Mariupol, for example.
You know what, Jackson?
But what I'll say, Pierce, one question. What I'll say is, if you're so outraged over the atrocities allegedly of Putin in Ukraine and all these Ukrainians that have been killed, and you tweet about it nonstop, why did you not tweet once about the atrocities that were perpetrated by the Ukrainian government from 2014 to 2022 against those ethnic Russians in the Donbass?
Well, yeah,
good question.
Well, my family are actually largely ethnic.
We can probably explore this in more detail. I mean, Will Jackson, I've got no desire to censor you, to stop you having your views. You're entitled to them. I will challenge them. We run out of time tonight, but I think we should do this again.
So, hey, cheers to Piers Morgan, at least at the end there, saying, hey, we had some technical difficulties. I come back. He's inviting him back. So I like that. But honestly, bravo, Jackson, just for saying all that stuff on a mainstream news show. That takes chutzpah, as my Jewish friends would call it. It takes balls, as my Italian friends would call it, balls and chutzpah. And I commend that man for that. And I also, before I log off tonight with my crooked ass glasses, I just want to call out Katie Halper, who's trying to bite my style now. I saw her on the Useful Idiots Monday morning podcast. Now she's got sunglasses on. I see you, Katie. I see you trying to bite my style over here. Bite my sunglasses style. You can't have it, Katie. You cannot have it. If she starts wearing a beanie, that's it. We're fighting. For real. I'm kidding. I love Katie. And she said she had an eye infection. Honestly, if you could see my eyes, like you don't want to see my eyes. They're just so pretty and blue. You will fall in love with me instantly. And that's why I have to wear these sunglasses. It's like I have to really dull myself down so I don't just, completely blind everyone with my intense, radiant beauty. It took me a minute to come up with that. You like that? All right. So anyway, I did have one more thing I was going to touch on. It's not 1 a.m. yet, so maybe I'll go for a couple more minutes. It looks like my connection's pretty good still, and everything's golden. But maybe not. I was going to talk about that Barbie movie a little bit. You know what? Why the fuck not? They haven't shut me off yet. Let's do another quick little segment here, little 10-minute segment. So let's talk about the Barbie movie. So the Barbie movie that just came out, it's like the reverse of the Jason Aldean video, right? It's like, it's what political thing are conservatives pissed off about? The Barbie movie. What political thing are liberals pissed off about? The Jason Aldean song, because it has a, you know, is filmed in front of a lynching place or whatever. So I really dig this chick. Her channel is called Deep Focus Lens, and she's another one who I always try to like. I'm like, yeah, follow her, or whatever. Like, she has like 20,000 followers. Like, she does not need my help at all. You, like, most people know who this woman is. She does awesome work. But I liked her take on the Barbie movie, so I'm just gonna play a little bit of it because I think she just has really rational, informed takes, and she usually does them in a low cut shirt that kind of shows a little bit of cleavage, which is endearing if you're a man.
It's fantastic. Hey everybody, today I am going to be reviewing Barbie. This film was directed by Greta Gerwig. Man, if you haven't heard about this one, I would be incredibly surprised. The marketing for this film has been nothing short of brilliant, I have to tell you. Talk about good cross-marketing. I feel like indirectly Mattel and Hollywood, that combination coming together kind of redefines both brands in a way that maybe they weren't expecting. So it's like they gain profit but also attention in the same breath. So that's what you want. But at the same time you're gaining that spotlight, it means you're also taking a lot of criticism within this satire from basically all angles. Now, I know it may seem crazy to all of you, but I was never that interested in this Barbie movie, even when I initially heard about it, just because I don't really think I'm the particular demographic they're shooting for. But then when I heard when Greta Gerwig was attached and she would be writing and directed, obviously I became interested at that point because she has a lot of merit. Quite the talented writer, as we all know, so I think bringing her aboard was really, really smart and something that I didn't expect, again, so far as the marketing is concerned. I think here you're able to gain a lot more people that wouldn't initially be interested in a Barbie movie. People that are maybe more adult and maybe, you know, the types of people that might go see more the critically acclaimed art house type films, independent films. And that's obviously where Gerwig comes from. She comes from the mumblecore genre. She comes from that indie art house scene, and she really built it for this particular generation of writers and directors. She helped build it, I would say. And so I think like merging that with this like big summer movie spectacle of this type,
this woman clearly knows her film. She's a very educated film geek.
It's really interesting. And I would say, just from what I've observed, this seems to be one of the more highly anticipated movies of the year. But is it worth the hype? It's really hard for me to answer that question because I'm so torn. A big part of me wants to be like, yes, absolutely yes, this is such an entertaining movie. But then there's another part of me that has to be honest and say, no. It's the convoluted nature of the thesis, I think, and the complexity of the message that they're trying to sell here through all these more simplified archetypes of dolls, and then trying to talk about like men versus women and how that relates to corporate tie-ins and all of that, while also being very critical of all these things in the same breath. Something about that started to feel a little bit heavy-handed and overbearing, and it kind of canceled things out for me. But again, there is so much of this movie that I did enjoy just as a piece of entertainment. It carried me along with it gleefully from the first frame to the last frame. And even though I rolled my eyes at certain points, I found myself quite smitten with a lot of elements in it. But I do think that it ultimately feels a little bit out of touch with the types of things that it's trying to make sense of. And I think that just creates more problems for me just as a viewer. And I think the movie presents itself more as like an academic thesis, you know, pastiche of other films in order to make a point about current ideologies, identity politics, etc. Which is fine, you know, that's what it is. But I think often the over-analysis of some of these elements leads to kind of a tripping over itself result in terms of the conclusion, which I have to be honest is often the case in academia, I find. I've been accused of it, believe it or not. And I think analytical pieces of art can be really, really powerful and special. I think it's a wonderful impulse to have just as a writer and as a creator, but I feel like at times, especially in movies like this, I feel like it removes a lot of the risks involved in a typical narrative situation, which does ultimately defeat the purpose of entertainment to a degree. Just the weight of consequence as an example for, you know, whether Barbie needs to return to her Barbie land, Barbie world, whatever it's called, and close the portal between the real world and her fantasy world. And it doesn't really involve a lot of risk within the narrative. It's consciously making a point about all of that. The movie is using all of these old tropes that that we've seen a million times in order to explore current ideas, which is something we've been seeing, you know, all through cinema. And that's what this is. This is a Wizard of Oz Matrix mashup, even equipped with Rhea Perlman as basically the Oracle and Will Ferrell as the Wizard. I'm just not sure if it really arrives at something that is honest so far as how it reflects our current reality. And obviously these stereotypes, the Barbie stereotypes that we're talking about, they're always going to be held back by the idea of being a stereotype, which, you know, is part of the point, obviously, as I keep saying, but it's also an issue the movie has. But I want to take a moment to talk about the things I like about the movie, because there are things, like I said, that I absolutely adore. The writing is full of clever quips and winks and references galore, and the references are not stale. They feel really interesting and fun in ways I haven't seen before, and this is a very old school type of movie in terms of just the look of it. It feels like a Technicolor world, like a production from the 1950s. And I really have to appreciate it. I was not expecting.
See, this made me interested. When she starts talking about this stuff, I was like, oh, now I kind of want to see this.
This movie to be as grandiose and elaborate as it was. It did feel, like I said, it felt like a giant MGM musical. I half expected to see like Esther Williams swimming in some, you know, like kaleidoscopic Busby Berkeley type of musical number. But it still feels modern. It's like the sets have that bright Technicolor type of quality, but there's a lot of like modern pastels and things that remind me of more this like A24 hipster generation and the Gen Zers and everything. But the pop of it is just really pleasant to see. There's a lot of fizz and sparkle to this movie. It reminded me of like Singing in the Rain at times. There's a big reference to Singing in the Rain in this movie. Reminded me of Grease a lot. It certainly reminded me of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes as well. And when this movie does break into song, and maybe this is just my bias, but I think that's when it's at its best. There's some really clever numbers in there and very well directed. And even talking about Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, there's a number in that movie where they do something very clever. It's like that inverted thing where you have Jane Russell and she's actually objectifying. Basic, clear hero's journey by design allows the theater to give special props to Kate McKinnon. She plays the reality starts to break through in her. She comes off as somebody who is very likable and very smart. Manipulative way. She's doing it where she's just very like, this Barbie land anymore. I want to go to the real world. I want to something that is almost like a fully dimensional character, even though it's a Ken doll. He truly steals this movie right from under everybody else. And this movie has some real.
This is what I wanted to show you. This is I'll shut it off after this. But she talks about Ryan Gosling as Ken in the movie.
I think he is creating something that is almost like a fully dimensional character, even though it's a Ken doll. He truly steals this movie right from under everybody else. And this movie has some real, as I said, really great performances and really great actors in it. It kind of gave off that like Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow energy, where a character comes in, you never expected them to be anything special, and yet the actor just infused it with everything you could possibly want, and then you walked away realizing that was the best part of the film. As I've been saying for years, I do not think that Ryan Gosling's talent is for the dramatic work. I actually think he's kind of monotone there, and it doesn't work for me as well. It's in his deadpan humor. He should be doing comedies. And if this is not all the proof you need that he needs to be doing comedies just more and more of, then I think you're dead inside. I found myself rooting for him, I think, more than any other character, more than any of the Barbies, certainly. And I do think that is part of the problem. Ken, obviously, as a character, and this makes sense, you know, Ken is an afterthought to Barbie, right? We all agree with this. I certainly played with Barbie dolls when I was a kid, and I had a million Barbies. I had maybe one Ken doll, maybe one Skipper doll at one point, and they were just kind of there, just to kind of complete the collection, really. The movie is using that idea, you know, that Ken and Barbie as part of its thesis on feminism. Barbie's rule.
So, her channel's awesome, and her reviews are really on point. But I saw that, and you know, it's the summertime. I wanted to do a little fun little segment about the Barbie movie. Come on. So once again, I feel shitty that I was late to get to live tonight. So forgive me for that. We're going to try and do maybe a weekend coffee show on Saturday with Willie Bragg. If not this Saturday, the following Saturday. But for the most part, I will be on Wednesday nights at 10:30. Just tonight, some shit came up. Some important things came up, and I was a little bit later to the punch than I normally am. So forgive me for that. If you give a shit and you're paying attention, to the Politics Show. I fucking love you and I appreciate it. And thank you so much for paying attention, and hope you take good care of yourselves out there. Namaste. Have a good night, y'all.